Have you ever wondered why some women never directly say what they feel, yet their actions reveal everything? What if the signs you've been looking for have been right in front of you all along? Most men think attraction is obvious. They expect clear words, bold signals, or dramatic moments. But female psychology often works differently. A woman's deepest feelings are usually revealed through her behavior, her attention, and the emotional connection she builds with someone she truly cares about. In this video, we're going to uncover 3 powerful signs that may indicate a woman secretly desires a deeper level of intimacy and connection with you. These are not manipulation tricks or dating games. They are real emotional signals rooted in trust, attachment, and human psychology. If you've ever been confused about her mixed signals, questioned her feelings, or wondered what she truly wants, stay with me until the end, because one small sign could completely change the way you understand. De-attraction forever. There was a time when a man sat across from a woman in a small coffee shop, completely unaware that something important was happening right in front of him. To him, their meetings seemed casual. They talked about work, daily life, random memories, and sometimes nothing important at all. Yet every time the conversation ended, she would find a reason to make it last a little longer. She would ask one more question before leaving. She would bring up another story when the silence arrived. Sometimes she would send a message later that evening about something they had already discussed, not because she needed an answer, but because she wasn't ready for the connection to end. At first, he didn't understand it. He thought maybe she was just being friendly, maybe she was naturally kind. But over time, he began to notice a pattern. No matter how busy she was, she always seemed to make space for him. No matter how short their conversations started, they somehow stretched into hours. She wasn't chasing excitement. She wasn't seeking attention. What she was really doing was trying to stay close to someone who made her feel understood. This is one of the most overlooked truths about human attachment. When someone secretly desires deeper intimacy, they don't always announce it with dramatic words. Instead, they try to remain present in your life. They create opportunities for connection because being around you feels emotionally meaningful. The time itself becomes valuable. Many people think attraction is only about physical chemistry, but emotional attachment works differently. Emotional attachment grows through shared moments. It grows through conversations that seem ordinary but leave a lasting impact. It grows when someone starts associating your presence with comfort, safety, and peace. That is why a woman who is developing deeper feelings often finds reasons to stay close. She may not even realize she's doing it consciously. Her heart simply enjoys being where it feels connected. Unfortunately, many people fail to recognize this when it is happening. They wait for obvious signs and miss the subtle ones. They search for grand gestures while overlooking the quiet moments that reveal the truth. Then one day, the connection disappears, and only afterward do they realize what was standing in front of them. Heartbreak often begins with things left unsaid. There was another man who experienced this lesson in a painful way. For months, he had a woman in his life who constantly reached out to him. She asked how his day was going. She remembered important dates. She looked for excuses to spend time together. Yet because she never openly confessed her feelings, he assumed her actions meant nothing special. He believed there would always be another opportunity, another conversation, another chance to understand what she felt. Then life changed. She slowly stopped calling. The messages became less frequent. The connection faded. Eventually, she moved on and built a life with someone else. Years later, he admitted that the greatest pain wasn't losing her. The greatest pain was realizing that she had been offering him something genuine, and he had been too distracted to see it. He wasn't heartbroken because she left. He was heartbroken because he finally understood what her presence had meant. Experiences like these teach an important lesson about relationships. People don't just fall in love with someone's appearance or achievements. They fall in love with how they feel when they're around that person. When a woman consistently chooses to spend time with you, when she naturally seeks your company, when she creates reasons to stay connected, those moments deserve attention. They often reveal an emotional bond that words cannot fully express. At the same time, there is another lesson hidden inside this reality. Self-worth matters just as much as attachment. Sometimes people become so focused on whether someone likes them that they forget the deeper question. Are they showing up as the kind of person capable of receiving genuine love? Healthy relationships are built when two people appreciate each other's presence without desperation. Real connection isn't about chasing. It isn't about forcing. It's about recognizing the value of someone's effort when they willingly choose to be near you. As we grow older, many of us realize that love rarely arrives in the dramatic ways we imagined. More often, it appears quietly. It sits beside us during ordinary conversations. It checks in after a difficult day. It stays a few minutes longer than necessary. It finds small reasons to remain connected. The tragedy is that people often recognize these moments only after they are gone. That is why emotional maturity is so important. It teaches us to pay attention. It teaches us to appreciate the people who make room for us in their lives. It teaches us that someone's time is one of the most valuable gifts they can offer, because time is the one thing they can never get back. When a woman repeatedly finds reasons to stay close to you, don't rush to assumptions, but don't ignore it either. Look beyond the words. Look at the consistency. Look at the effort. Look at the moments she chooses to spend with you when she could be anywhere else. Sometimes the deepest feelings are not spoken out loud. Sometimes they are revealed through presence, patience, and the quiet desire to remain near someone who feels like home. And in the end, the people who truly care about you rarely ask for much. They simply keep finding reasons to stay, hoping that one day you'll realize why. There was a woman who seemed strong to everyone around her. She smiled easily, carried herself with confidence, and rarely let people see what she was truly feeling. Friends admired her strength. Coworkers respected her independence. From the outside, it looked like she had everything under control. But deep inside, she carried wounds that very few people knew about. Years earlier, she had given her heart to someone who promised to stay forever. She trusted him with her dreams, her fears, and every fragile piece of herself. Like many people who fall deeply in love, she believed that honesty would create a bond that could survive anything. Instead, she found herself facing a painful goodbye she never expected. The relationship ended, but the heartbreak remained long after the person was gone. After that experience, she built walls around her heart, not because she stopped believing in love, but because she became afraid of losing herself again. She learned how to keep conversations light. She learned how to avoid discussing the parts of her life that hurt the most. She became skilled at protecting herself. Then she met someone new. At first, their conversations were ordinary. They talked about daily routines, favorite movies, childhood memories, and random moments from life. Nothing seemed different. Nothing seemed extraordinary. But as weeks turned into months, something began to change. One evening, during a simple conversation, she shared a story she had never told him before. It wasn't a dramatic confession. It was a small memory about a difficult period in her life. As she spoke, she noticed something unexpected. He wasn't trying to fix her. He wasn't judging her. He wasn't waiting for his turn to talk. He was simply listening. For someone carrying emotional scars, being heard can feel more powerful than being admired. After that conversation, she started opening up a little more. She talked about mistakes she regretted. She shared fears she usually kept hidden. She revealed insecurities she rarely admitted even to herself. Slowly, the strong woman everyone thought they knew allowed someone to see the vulnerable person she had been protecting for years. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional intimacy. When a woman begins sharing the parts of herself she usually hides, it often and she feels safe. Vulnerability is not weakness. In many ways, it is one of the bravest things a person can offer. Anyone can share good news. Anyone can talk about achievements and successes. But it takes trust to reveal pain. It takes courage to expose fears. It takes emotional investment to let someone see the parts of your story that still hurt. Many people misunderstand attraction because they focus only on external signs. They look for flirtation, compliments, or physical chemistry. Yet some of the deepest connections are formed during conversations where two people reveal their true selves. Emotional attachment grows when masks begin to disappear. The truth is that every person carries hidden struggles. Every heart has experienced disappointment. Every soul has faced moments of loneliness. When someone chooses to share those experiences with you, they are giving you access to a part of their world that most people never see. Unfortunately, vulnerability also creates risk. The woman eventually learned this lesson again. As her trust grew, so did her attachment. She believed she had found someone who truly understood her. She thought the connection was mutual. She thought the emotional safety she felt was leading towards something lasting. But life doesn't always follow the path we expect. One day, she discovered that the future she imagined wasn't shared by the person she trusted. The conversations remained, the friendship remained, but the deeper commitment she hoped for never arrived. The heartbreak that followed was painful, not because she had shared too much, but because she had allowed herself to hope again. For a while, she regretted opening up. She questioned whether vulnerability was a mistake. She wondered if protecting herself would have been easier. But with time, she realized something important. The problem was never her willingness to be vulnerable. The problem was placing her worth in someone else's response. Growth began when she understood that emotional openness is not something to be ashamed of. It is not a weakness that needs to be hidden. It is evidence of courage. It is proof that despite past disappointments, she still had the strength to trust. Many people spend years building walls after heartbreak. They convince themselves that avoiding vulnerability will protect them from future pain. What they don't realize is that those same walls often block the very connection they are searching for. Real intimacy cannot exist without emotional honesty. Love is not created when two perfect people meet. Love is created when two imperfect people feel safe enough to reveal who they really are. The fears, the doubts, the scars, the dreams, the memories they usually keep locked away. When a woman begins sharing her vulnerable side, she is often doing far more than telling stories. She is inviting someone into her emotional world. She is saying, without directly saying it, "This is who I really am." That invitation, and should never be taken lightly. Whether the relationship lasts forever or eventually fades, the trust behind that vulnerability deserves respect. Because every time someone shares a painful memory, every time they reveal an insecurity, every time they expose a hidden fear, they are taking a risk. They are choosing connection over protection. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Heartbreak may teach us caution, but healing teaches us courage. The goal is not to become someone who never gets hurt. The goal is to become someone who remains open to love without losing their sense of self. Because the strongest hearts are not the ones that never break, they are the ones that break, heal, and still find the courage to be seen. There was a man who once believed that love was measured by big moments. He thought grand gestures were what mattered most. Expensive gifts, dramatic confessions, unforgettable dates, those were the things he imagined people remembered when they truly care about someone. For years he chased relationships looking for those obvious signs of affection, never realizing that the deepest forms of attachment often reveal themselves in the smallest details. Then he met a woman who changed the way he understood love. At first, nothing seemed unusual about their connection. Their conversations were simple and natural. They talked about everyday life, exchanged stories, and laughed about random things that seemed unimportant. There was no dramatic beginning, no instant declaration of feelings. Everything developed quietly. One afternoon during a conversation, he casually mentioned a book he loved as a teenager. It was a small comment, the kind most people would forget within minutes. Weeks later, she brought it up again. She remembered the title, remembered why it mattered to him, and even asked if he had ever reread it. The moment surprised him. Not because the book was important, but because she remembered. As time passed, similar NTS kept happening. She remembered his favorite coffee order. She remembered the story behind a scar on his hand. She remembered the name of a childhood friend he had mentioned only once. She noticed when his mood changed, even when he insisted everything was fine. She paid attention to details that seemed invisible to everyone else. Slowly, he began to understand something that many people learn too late. People remember what matters to them. When someone is emotionally attached to you, they naturally become curious about your world. The little things stop being little things. The details become meaningful because they are connected to you. What others overlook, they notice. What others forget, they remember. This kind of attention often reveals more than words ever could. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can offer compliments. But genuine emotional investment is often found in the quiet habit of paying attention. The truth is that life moves quickly. Most people are distracted by their own worries, responsibilities, and struggles. Human beings naturally focus on what feels important to them. That is why it means so much when someone remembers details you barely remember sharing yourself. It shows that your words stayed with them long after the conversation ended. For the woman, those details weren't just facts. They were pieces of a person she was growing attached to. Yet, like many beautiful connections, their story wasn't perfect. As their bond deepened, so did his feelings. He began imagining a future. He started believing that someone who cared so much about the details of his life must surely feel the same depth of connection he felt. But relationships are rarely that simple. Circumstances changed. Life pulled them in different directions. What seemed certain slowly became complicated. Conversations became less frequent. Time created distance where closeness once existed. Eventually, they drifted apart. The ending hurt more than he expected. For months, he replayed memories in his mind. He thought about the moments they shared, the conversations that lasted for hours, the connection that once felt so natural. Yet among all those memories, it wasn't the big moments that stayed with him most. It was the details. He remembered how she always asked about important events in his life. He remembered how she noticed when something felt off before he even said a word. He remembered the way she listened so carefully that months later she could recall stories he had nearly forgotten himself. Those memories taught him a lesson about love that heartbreak often reveals. Real affection is often hidden inside attention. Many people spend their lives searching for someone who understands them. Not someone who agrees with everything they say, not someone who never disappoints them, but someone who genuinely sees them. Being seen is one of the most powerful emotional experiences a person can have. There is something deeply comforting about realizing another human being notices the small things about you, the habits you don't talk about, the worries you try to hide, the dreams you mention casually because you're afraid they'll never come true. When someone pays attention to those details, it creates a feeling of emotional safety. It tells you that you matter. It tells you that your existence is significant enough to be remembered. Heartbreak, however, teaches another important lesson. No matter how much someone notices you, your value cannot depend on their attention. For a long time, the man struggled with this truth. After the relationship ended, he missed being understood. He missed having someone who remembered the little things. He missed feeling important in someone's world. But healing eventually helped him see something he had overlooked. The reason those details mattered so much wasn't because they proved his worth. They mattered because they reminded him of the kind of connection human beings are capable of. Of creating. Instead of focusing on what he lost, he began focusing on what he learned. He learned to pay closer attention to the people he cared about. He learned to listen more carefully. He learned that meaningful relationships are built not only through love, but through presence, through noticing, through remembering. Because at the end of the day, love isn't always expressed through dramatic declarations. Sometimes love sounds like remembering a story someone told 6 months ago. Sometimes love looks like noticing sadness hidden behind a smile. Sometimes love is asking about something everyone else forgot. And sometimes the deepest form of attachment is simply making another person feel that their life, their words, and their existence are important enough to be remembered. Because in a world where most people are busy being noticed, the rarest gift is someone who quietly notices you. There was a woman who had spent most of her life believing that relationships were supposed to move quickly. Movies, social media, and even the stories she heard from friends seemed to suggest that attraction was all about chemistry, excitement, and passion. She thought that when two people liked each other, everything would happen naturally and effortlessly. But life has a way of teaching lessons that no movie ever can. After experiencing several relationships that started fast and ended painfully, she began to notice a pattern. In the beginning, everything always felt exciting. There were late-night conversations, constant messages, and powerful emotions. Yet once the excitement faded, she often found herself sitting across from someone she barely knew. They had shared attraction, but they had never truly shared themselves. Each heartbreak left behind the same question. Why did something that felt so strong disappear so quickly? For years, she searched for answers. Then she met someone who was different. Their connection didn't begin with intense romance. It didn't. To begin with dramatic declarations or overwhelming passion. Instead, it started with conversations. Long conversations. Honest conversations. Conversations about childhood memories, family struggles, personal goals, fears, disappointments, and dreams. At first, she wasn't sure what to think. Part of her wondered why things felt slower than her previous relationships. Another part of her felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She felt safe. For the first time, she wasn't worried about impressing someone. She wasn't trying to create a perfect image. She wasn't hiding parts of herself out of fear of being judged. She simply felt comfortable being who she was. Weeks passed, and their emotional bond continued to grow. They learned how each other handled stress. They talked about past heartbreaks. They discussed mistakes they had made and lessons they had learned. They shared stories that revealed their strengths and weaknesses. Something beautiful was happening. Before either of them became deeply attached physically, they were becoming emotionally connected. This is something many people overlook in modern relationships. True intimacy is often misunderstood. Many assume intimacy begins with physical closeness. In reality, the strongest form of intimacy often begins much earlier. It begins when two people slowly lower their defenses and allow themselves to be known. The woman began realizing that emotional connection creates a foundation that physical attraction alone cannot sustain. Anyone can be attracted to someone's appearance. Anyone can enjoy chemistry, but emotional intimacy requires something much deeper. It requires patience. It requires honesty. It requires trust. Most importantly, it requires vulnerability. As their relationship grew, she noticed that their conversations became the part she valued most. Even on ordinary days, she looked forward to hearing his thoughts. She cared about his opinions, his experiences, and his feelings. Being understood became more meaningful than being admired. For the first time, she wasn't falling in love with an image of someone. She was connecting with a real human being. That emotional closeness changed everything. But life rarely moves in a straight line. Just when she started believing she had finally found something lasting, unexpected challenges appeared. Circumstances neither of them could fully control began putting pressure on the relationship. Responsibilities increased. Priorities shifted. The future they imagined together became harder to reach. Eventually, they faced a painful reality. Love alone wasn't enough to keep them together. The goodbye that followed broke her heart. Not because their relationship lacked meaning, but because it had so much meaning. For months, she carried the pain of losing someone who had truly known her. The memories haunted her. The conversations replayed in her mind. She missed the emotional safety they had built together. At times, she wondered if it would have been easier if they had never become so close emotionally. Maybe then the loss wouldn't have hurt so much. But healing slowly revealed a different truth. The depth of her pain reflected the depth of the connection. And despite the heartbreak, she wouldn't trade that experience. Why? Because emotional intimacy had taught her something valuable about herself. It showed her that she was capable of being fully seen by another person. It showed her that genuine connection exists. It showed her that relationships are not measured by how long they last, but by how deeply they help us grow. Many people spend years chasing excitement while ignoring emotional compatibility. They focus on attraction but neglect understanding. They pursue chemistry but avoid vulnerability. Then they wonder why relationships collapse when difficulties arise. The strongest relationships are rarely built on passion alone. They are built on friendship. They are built on trust. They are built on two people learning how to understand each other beneath the surface. When a woman seeks emotional connection before physical connection, she is often looking for something more meaningful than temporary attraction. She wants to know whether the person beside her is someone she can trust with her heart. She wants to know whether they can handle difficult conversations. She wants to know whether they will remain present when life becomes complicated. These questions matter because emotional safety creates lasting intimacy. Without emotional connection, physical closeness can feel empty. Without trust, attraction eventually becomes fragile. Without understanding, relationships often struggle to survive challenges. As the years passed, the woman's view of love completely changed. She stopped measuring relationships by intensity and started measuring them by depth. She stopped asking, "How strongly do I feel about this person?" and started asking, "How safe do I feel being myself around them?" That shift transformed her life. Because true love is not finding someone who only desires your presence during the easy moments. True love is finding someone who wants to understand your mind, your fears, your scars, your dreams, and your soul before asking for anything else. And when emotional connection comes first, intimacy stops being something you do, it becomes something you share. Because the deepest form of love is not being desired for who you appear to be, but being cherished for who you truly are. As we come to the end of this conversation, remember something important. Attraction is not always spoken, and real intimacy is not always physical. The strongest connections are built through trust, attention, vulnerability, and emotional understanding. When a woman chooses to stay close, opens her heart, remembers the small things about you, and seeks a deeper emotional bond, she may be revealing feelings that words alone cannot express. Boo. The most valuable lesson isn't about understanding her, it's about understanding yourself. Your worth does not come from someone's attention, approval, or affection. Real confidence comes from knowing your value even when no one is watching. The healthier your relationship with yourself becomes, the healthier your relationships with others will be. If this video helped you see relationships, love, and female psychology from a new perspective, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into love, attraction, emotional attachment, and self-growth. Because sometimes one insight can change the way you love forever.